Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined by a friend of the show, returning, running for a House seat in Montana, Ross Frazier. How you doing, Ross?
Doing great today, Eric. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Last time around, you're running for the House District 7 in Montana's State House. Last time I guess I had you on maybe 2 months ago or so, and we kind of went through your platform. So go check that out. Ross, suffice it to say, Ross does not take corporate PAC money. He sort of checks all the boxes on the progressive policy front, Medicare for all, living wage, Green New Deal principles, et cetera, et cetera. So we got into the policy there and some of the framing, which I do kind of want to touch on some of that here today, and get your opinion on maybe the presidential race, what that's looking like in Montana, maybe expand a little bit on some of the policy, but, just the pulse check, what's the state of the race just in general?
It's really hard to tell because, we're down ballot candidates and we're in what's honestly kind of a neglected area of our state and our country to begin with. Montana has, the odd reputation of voting presidentially very red. There's the flip side to that where we're pretty purple when it comes to our state legislatures. We have a long history of strong Democratic governorship, but people tend to kind of ignore that, especially at the state party level. So yeah, we're ignored down here. I don't know any amount of numbers when it comes to how I'm doing, support wise or voter wise or approval wise compared to my candidate in the district of Kalispell, House District 7. All I have to go by is my personal interactions, whether that be door to door or video like we're doing now. And the primary results, since it was just myself versus the two Republican candidates and a Libertarian candidate. So, and those were very promising, but it does make gauging where we're at in an election really weird, tricky, difficult.
Yeah.
I would say this, though. I would say that I feel like I have succeeded in the goal of my campaign, which was to bring together an alliance of the known Democratic centrist voters who are already in the election system as known to vote solidly Democrat in our area, and the youth voters, who was just completely neglected voting bloc, like perennially neglected, always, not just here, but across the country. But I reached out to them, and I got a bunch of them as volunteers working every day for me in this campaign. That's amazing. It's so encouraging. And then on the third group that I brought in were the strong progressives in my city, who are the people when, when the militias come to occupy the Depot Park area of Kalispell, Montana, which they do every Saturday on the dot. We get, a small collection of folks, real activists, who go out and do a counter protest every weekend. And they don't have options normally in our races. So the fact that I've been able to reach out to these three different segments, of the voter base, I see as a win. And I hope that it will be enough, but that remains to be seen because we've got an incumbent Republican we're running against in a place where he's won two terms already. Right. We'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I like that attitude, right? It is a momentum builder, and it's a bit of a movement cycle. And, there are a lot of Democrats running in really challenging red districts. And there's a lot of them that, like I'll say it for you and you can expand on it if you want, that just kind of get ignored or even neglected or sometimes even undermined by a Democratic Party, right? There's a district in Maryland where, all 7 of the districts in the state have been gerrymandered to be Democrats. And then there's the last one that was gerrymandered to be Republican, and they ignore that one, right? But this time around, we have a real Democrat running in that district, potentially flipping it, right? So it's not unheard of that a district gets just neglected willfully, right, by the party. And put a pin in that before I ask you about the Democratic Party. Let's talk about how terrible the Republican incumbent is. just to frame it properly, right? So his name is Frank Garner. And the one thing that I noticed, and I'll just cue you up on this, was that let me read my fact here, that Montana is the 49th state rated in state-funded financial aid for education, right? And he's voted to block further investment in that, which is undermining, progress in your district. It's a people-centered idea. Who wouldn't want investment in educating their own youth, right? So, and I think he's done similar for housing. Can you talk about just how terrible the incumbent is in terms of, voting against your constituents?
So it's a tricky situation with talking about this terrible incumbent, because he, as you've noted, has a fairly long list of issues where he's completely on the absolute wrong side of them, whether that's education funding, which, talk about hypocrisy. Here's a guy who got his education from the Flathead Valley Community College and built his life from that education. And then, that hypocrisy aside, and then also the other votes against, women's rights, against women's health, heartbeat bills for, abortions. I mean, this is some pretty fringe stuff he's voted for. And yet somehow has built for himself this incredibly pristine public image of himself across our valley here, across our county. And because of the one vote that he made, which was to expand Medicaid in our state just once, which even that was like almost a poison pill because of a work requirement that he added into it, which basically said you have to also be working and making some level of income from your work before you can qualify for that Medicaid. Oh, but also if you're making this much from working, now you don't qualify anymore. I mean, even that was just nothing, basically. It was less than a Band-Aid.
And it sounds like those conditions are put in just so he can give himself cover, saying he voted for it, and yet, right?
This is the game that they play,
Yeah.
And it, unfortunately, for a lot of people, it works. But again, this is not someone who is unbeatable. We can point out the facts that of his campaign, of his legislative history, and we can fight him on those facts. And I think that we can win.
Here, here. Is it, you talked about building those three coalitions, and that is, like you said, and, I'm going to go back to the way you framed it. That is a win in and of itself, right? Particularly in an area that, probably has been neglected by the party, right? So, I imagine that's largely due, not just because of how terrible he is, but what you're running on. Like, your policy is resonating, because those are, Medicare for all in a pandemic doesn't care about a party, right? We all need broadband if we're homeschooling or working from home, right? It doesn't care if you're blue or red, right? Is the policy resonating? Is that the key to building those coalitions that you talk about? Again,
so far down ballot, it is a little tricky to tell. But yes, I absolutely feel like they are. I feel like it's the linchpin to the whole thing. That's my personal take on it. And there have been constantly others in the party, people who ran in this place before I did, who argue against that these things that I'm asking for are too liberal. They're going to turn off voters. And I just fully disagree. Look, there's something like around 30% of the population in my district that are not registered to either party and have no known voting history, in at least in the Democrats' database systems. And so this is what I'm asking: why do I need to be eating away at the fringes of the Republicans, the centrist Republicans, all the time to try to fulfill their whims, when there's this entire swath of my local population that has not even been given a chance to vote for what could be some very popular policy proposals like Medicare for all, like a higher minimum wage. I mean, just such basic things that the party out here is afraid to propose, to get behind. So yeah, I think and I hope that the policy message is what's bringing these people around. That the centrist Democrats, sorry guys, you didn't put up a candidate at all. I jumped in on the last day of the application process. Okay, so I'm your Democrat candidate. They can sort of fall in line due to that. And then the progressives of the area can see what a real progressive agenda might look like, and hopefully they get some energy out of that. And of course, the youth, someone who actually sees the systemic problems that they're facing, because I faced them too, and like not as badly as they're going to face them now in 2021. I can't even imagine what graduating from high school right now must feel like, but I do know what graduating from college in 2010 felt like. It was pretty rough.
Yeah, no doubt. Let me ask you, this is maybe a bit of a hard question, and I certainly don't want you to shoot yourself in the foot in any way. But, would you characterize the Democratic Party in your district? And, I wonder if this is a common occurrence, right? And you're experiencing it firsthand, right? So not only are you, you're building the coalitions, and that's magnificent. And like you said, why should you have to appeal to, pick off Republicans, right? Are they, I mean, succinctly, are they supporting you? Or do you feel like you're running against the Democratic Party? Are they withholding resources? Are they in any way being obstructive? And again, I don't want you to shoot yourself in the foot. So, you kind of need to earn those votes as well. But, I wonder, from your perspective, and maybe we talk about this after the election, right? But, I wonder from your perspective, like, do you feel like you're fighting two battles? And, like Bernie Sanders was constantly undermined by the Democratic Party. And, I don't know if you said you don't have any sense of polling numbers, and maybe that's just because of the size of your district or the resources in your district. But, other districts, House races, they have internal polling, and, that's a mechanism of the local party, but it costs money, which, I'm assuming a grassroots campaign like yours doesn't have in spades, right? So that's a long setup. But, do you feel like you're, fighting against the Democratic Party in a way?
I will say that I feel like they perhaps had different expectations going into the entire race than I did. I see my expectations in this race as, this is a pivotal moment in a chaotic year for all of us, to make some real solid choices on where we take our state, where we go into the future of our state, both economically, politically, socially. All these things are really important. Environmentally, I mean, we're out of time here. We got to act on these issues now. And I think that on their side, they are supportive, but they have a very different angle when it comes to their support. They see this as a good opportunity for a newcomer to get their name out there into the field and, maybe say some nice things and bring in some more supporters from the youth side, because they're unsure how to bring in more youth voters and more youth participation. And then maybe next election we'll have a good shot. And I'm like, first of all, this was something I was barely able to swing at this point in my life right now. And you're expecting me to wait another 4 years and, presume that my life is in such a way that I'll be able to run again. I can't make that promise. I can't make the promise that in 4 more years, these incredibly dangerous issues that are facing our state right now aren't going to already be, affecting us. So I guess the time frame, I'll put it that way, that they see this happening in is very different than the time frame that I see it happening in.
Right. And it's, if I remember correctly, like this, it might be geographically a kind of a sizable district, but it's not. I think the primary numbers, you were off by, like, the difference between you and the Republican was about 200 votes or something. It's not like tens of thousands of votes. This is easily swingable if we all just lean in a little bit, right? Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. Like you said, it was less than 200 votes. I want to say it was like 187 vote difference. And that the question is just, what are the levers that we pull to get this victory under our belts? Part of that vote difference might have been that my opponent had a primary opponent and I did not. At the same time, there is our third party candidate in the race. So he's kind of be sort of a interesting situation there. What it comes down to is like, when you have a real life, like you and I do, on top of an election, what can you afford to do and what's going to make the biggest impact? Right. And I can't do everything on my own. I hope that my county party and that my state party hear this message. I cannot do everything on my own here, guys. I can launch some social media things. I can do, some mailing events, some meet and greets. But again, we're grassroots. There's only so much that we can do. We don't have the polling data. We can't pull these phone lists out of thin air. So, we need more support. The non-targeted races are less set in stone than you think they are, just because we're in a red state presidentially. Here's an interesting statistic, Eric. Of the 50 state legislative seats that were up for grabs in this election, the Republicans left 8 of those seats unchallenged in the state. Most of those seats were in tribal lands on the reservation territories. The Democrats left 22 seats unchallenged. Right. I'm sorry, it wasn't 22. 28 seats were unchallenged. And so
out of how many? Out
of 50. So that's more than half were not challenged by a Democrat in this election. And then, when a Democrat does come in and try to fill that role, it is difficult when, it doesn't feel like you're treated like a serious thing. And again, why not? Less than 200 votes separated me from the Republican in the primary. How is that not serious? So we could win these, and it just takes a little bit of a lean in. Yeah,
especially in this year when there's at the presidential level, there's such an anti-Trump vote, right? Joe Biden wasn't anybody's first choice, right? But I think by and large, everyone has kind of agreed, like, well, it's better than the fascist, right? So, I think there's a movement to vote against Trump, right? And and there's in other districts, there's a reverse coattails effect, right? So, people down ballot can get out the vote, which will further buoy, the up ballot candidates, right? Especially in a year like this, we need everybody, all hands on deck, races from top to bottom, right? I hate to phrase it that way, but, one that's close like this, and, maybe you're overperforming despite them, right? Like you said, you don't have a sense of it, but it is so close. And, if what you say is true in building those coalitions, and I think you have a university or college in your district, and you've sort of ignited them or animated them quite a bit, if I remember correctly. So maybe that's just enough to get over that 200 hump, right? And maybe, maybe that will show them next time around that, hey, these other 28 seats that we didn't even try for, look what Ross did in HD7, right? Like maybe, why would you not even play? Why would you not even put a player in? Any thoughts on why that is? It's inexplicable.
It's sort of, let's use a word here, it's kind of the tradition out here. There's, and I believed this when I was still a youngster going to high school out here. There's Bozeman and there's Missoula. And those are the areas that are in play for the Democrats. And everywhere else is all red all the time. But it doesn't matter because enough people in Missoula and Bozeman, the two liberal hippie sanctuaries of our state, will make the difference in the governorship elections. And that's just been the way of thinking for years. How did it get there? I'm not really sure, because to be honest, Montana used to be considerably more blue than it is these days. But yeah, somewhere along the line, Democrats just started losing more, I think. And then they just started, giving up, I guess, ceding the ground.
Right.
And I suspect that this can't just be a Montana situation. I suspect that there's lots of other states that traditionally have been thought of as Republican strongholds, where I bet if you gave people a real Democratic challenger and not just like the next closest thing to a Republican, right? But like an actual, sorry, the thing's flipped, so I can't figure out where the center of the camera is, but give them an actual freaking choice for once. Please give them choices. Maybe you'd be surprised, or give them any choice at all, because like we said, 28 unchallenged House seats in my state. Of course, we're not going to win the House. Do you know how terrifying this is for me, by the way, Eric? We've got, to move up to the higher level races, which I don't want to do too much because they already take up the airtime, but the governorship race here, we've got this guy, Greg Gianforte. He's from the East Coast. He was already in a BBC documentary because he body slammed a BBC reporter during an interview, a town hall, no less. I mean, the guy's nutso. And
he literally body slammed, and then Trump praised him the next day, if I remember correctly. That's my kind of guy, right? And it was caught on audio, I think, if I remember correctly.
Both. Yeah. I mean, I was on audio, actually. You're right. So this is the guy we're going up against, and he stands a real chance to win this election. I mean, you mentioned earlier the sort of the weird situation with 2020, where we've got this sort of backlash against Trump, and that is true, I would say, in a lot of places. I am worried. Again, no data, so I can't prove this. But my personal hunch, though, is that in my own district and the outlying districts, especially around me, this might be a solid Trump victory on the presidential side. When you've got the armed militias going over to Portland and showing up in Michigan, half of those people are either based out of Kalispell, where I'm running, or Libby, which is about, I don't know, a couple hours drive away from us, or are just fully inspired by and in cahoots with these guys. I mean, Montana militias were the original, the OG, militia guys to begin with, and they still are, the Oath Keepers, all these guys. I mean, this is their joint, this is their jam, and so I worry that they've got the lead when it comes to the presidential side here. Right. My hope is that they've had their voices heard for years now, and they're about to hear the voice of the actual progressives that they live next to. That's what I hope.
Hear, hear. Yeah, and it's they, I don't know their full platform, right? I just straight up call them terrorists, right? But the people centered policies, right? Again, the Medicare for all, the living wages, right? The protecting the public lands, the environment, all those things, right? That should take precedence over identity politics, owning the libs, whatever hate motivates them, right? So you would hope over time with each cycle that their numbers would lessen, particularly once their leader in the White House is gone, right? So, if those 28 seats, if they had a Ross running in each of those 28 seats, if the Democratic Party in Montana was playing a long game, let's suppose they pick 50% of them up, right? If they only get 20% this cycle, but the momentum grows cycle over cycle, right? Hopefully, right? If they're having success with policy and so forth, they could pick it up, next cycle and flip the state house, right? It should be sort of a calculated long game, right? And a policy centric one, right? That was my point when I was starting at. It's the policies that's going to motivate people to come out and vote for a guy like you. You're fighting for the people. You're not fighting against. You're not working for a corporate PAC. Again, let me let me just throw it out here. Ross Frazier for HD7.com. He needs your donations, right? He's not taking money from Raytheon or, Comcast or whomever, right? He's fighting for the people in his district. So if we can throw him $5, $10, $100, that's going to go all the way. And just 200 seats, 200 votes in range, and like you said, you don't have polling, but Godspeed, like you're a whisker away from flipping this seat, right? And maybe that, I don't want to overstate it, but maybe that inspires next cycle people to run for those 28 seats that were unchallenged. Maybe someone else raises their hand, and you didn't say this explicitly, but part of that, I imagine those 20, how many of those would you say are in tribal lands, which makes it even more egregious, right? Like, why, they need representation, almost more than anybody at this point in time, right? So, to not motivate them or animate, that part of the Democratic constituency that they rely on, let's get some representation in those districts. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but am I ringing a bell? Is that true as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on, Eric. The whole point of the campaign has been that there's a group of people that's already had their say, that are already at the reins of power in our state. And we can see how well that's going for us as a society, not just in Montana, but pretty much all across the country at this point. There's people manipulating both, sides to pit everyday working people against each other over stupid identity politics when it's the policies. The policies are, we have a system that works against working class people, that forces us down into, these basically into generational poverty. And we have a system that doesn't want to address that doesn't want to bring people forward who are going to address those issues. And yeah, until we recognize what's been staring us in the face for these last, 30, 40 years, and talk about them in these elections, then we're going to just continue to have the same pathetic results at the polls for the Democratic Party. That's what's going to happen. So that's why I'm here. It's what I hope to accomplish, put these ideas out and hopefully change something.
Amazing. Well, you already have, right? So not to get melodramatic about it, but win, lose, or draw, you're already making the difference, right? You're already, screaming into, somewhere where there was silence, right? So you're already, there's a resonance there. You talked again, what you led off with the three coalitions, right? That, there was no Pied Piper blowing a flute until you sort of showed up, right? And just by the nature of you doing that, that begets something, right? That's a success, like you said, in and of itself. So thank you for being that voice. Thanks for, being the one to raise your hand and step forward. That, takes a lot of courage and wherewithal, and I'm sure a thick skin. And, I'm sure you're not a self-made billionaire, and you're sort of, I'm sure you're a working class guy working a day job and running a campaign at night and finding hours. And that is not an easy thing. And if you feel like the party is, in any way obstructive or, dragging their feet or just even lackadaisical because that's the way we've always done it, that can't be fun. So, thank you for pushing through all that and raising your voice. And, God, I hope on November 3rd, I see your name in the win column. But I will say, I'm win, lose, or draw. I'd love to have you back to talk about, the lessons you've learned and the challenges you faced, right, in running, because, you're just a regular guy trying to do the right thing by people in your district, right? And it's not easy. So I would love to learn, ask you to share what you've learned, what the challenges are, how someone else can do it, particularly if you've been, right? But
definitely.
Yeah. But let me just say it one more time. Ross Frazier for HD7.com. Actually, let me pull it up. Let me add it to the screen here. So here's Ross's website. He's got a donate button right here. So, go make a donation, $5, $10, $100, whatever you can afford. I keep saying Jamie Harrison doesn't need any more money. Sarah Gideon doesn't need any more money. Amy McGrath doesn't need any more money. If you can throw $27 to a race like Ross's, that's going to swing a race like this, right? And, you don't necessarily have to live in Montana, but, it's an important race and we're trying to build a bench here, right? And, it elevates sort of all of these progressive values. And, it's not like Ross is going to get into Montana's house and start taking money from, ExxonMobil or whatever. He's there to represent the people of his district. And, again, go check out our previous episode where it kind of went down policy and things like that. But yeah, he's unbought, unbossed, fighting for the right issues, fighting for the right people. So Godspeed. I wish you the best of luck on November 3rd. And, what I said, I don't say that lightly, much credit to you, much respect for you. Thank you for running. Thank you for fighting this fight. I know it's not an easy one. And, it takes, like I said, a lot of fortitude to do so. So, much respect to you, good sir. Anything that we didn't hit on, any news or policy wise? So the the Republican incumbent is terrible. We know that. You're a whisker away. We just need a little bit of resources. Come on, Democratic Party, lean into Ross's race, right? Anything policy wise or news wise that you want to hit on since the last time we talked?
Sure. So because of all of the sort of griping and the negativity and the just, craziness that's been talked about already, here, let's end it on a positive note. So here's something we should be looking forward to. Should I get elected? Should I get in there? All right. We've got a alternative fuel energy corridor that's been proposed going from Michigan through all the way to Montana, so far ending in Billings, Montana. All right. And this is going to be like charging stations. It's going to be hydro fuel cell recharging as well. I mean, it's going to be set up just for electric vehicles, and not just electric, passenger vehicles, but also for electric industrial, like transport and freight vehicles. So all of the things that you would need to bring electrical transportation across this swath of the country. In my district, up in Flathead, we generate 90% of our energy through renewable energy, which means if you owned a Tesla up here, you basically have zero carbon footprint because even your Tesla charging is coming from a renewable source. We should expand this across the whole rest of our state. So don't just have it end in Billings. Send it up to Missoula, send it down to Butte, send it up to me here in Kalispell. I mean, we could have like the most modern, up-to-date renewable energy transportation network that any state has ever had. And we can achieve this. Just with no carbon footprint. How awesome would that be? So this is the sort of thing people need to think about and look forward to. It's not just about fighting off the Greg Gianfortes and stopping whatever craziness they do if they get into office. It's about thinking about the new vision for the future and what an awesome place we could make our state if we really fought for it.
God, I love that. And that's the big affront to public lands is fossil fuels, correct?
Oh yeah.
So inherent in that is protecting the precious public lands, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, awesome. I'd love to hear more about that. You say it's from Michigan to Montana. Mm-hmm. What's the name of it?
It is a alternative fuel corridor. Okay, don't quote me on that. I may need to double check, but that is, I believe, what the name of it is. Yeah, it's got the word corridor in it.
That's amazing. Right. Well, we know that much. That's amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that and start sort of promoting that after the election. That's incredible. Oh, yeah. Well, Ross, like I said, I think I've blown enough, kind words your way,
yes,
and all of them sincere. And I don't say that lightly. Like I mean every word I say. And thank God for you for running. And anyone watching, share this. Go like Ross's page. He doesn't have giant money behind him, but he has us, right? And it's just a whisker away. Like it's just a couple hundred votes. It's can flip this seat, and then if it gets other seats, we get challenges running in those 28 seats next time, and maybe we animate the local Democratic Party to see a new way, right? All that would be a blessing. So it's in reach. And again, his website, Ross Frazier for HD7.com. Please donate. Again, share this video, share his page, go like his socials, retweet him. That gets exposure, particularly if you know anybody in that district. Give them a call and so forth. I'm guessing early voting has started for you.
Voting's already started for us. everybody got their ballot hopefully in the mail by this Friday. And if not, please reach out to me and I will direct you to the voting resources for our district. You can still vote on election day. You can register on the same day as the vote in person on November 3rd if you go to the local election office here in downtown Kalispell. So, yep, sorry, we're already fully into this stuff.
Right on. I love it. How exciting. Well, I hope you have a great night on November 3rd. I will be watching for your name, sir. I can't wait to talk to you next time and call you Representative Frazier. I look forward to that conversation, my friend. Godspeed, November 3rd. Ross Frazier for HD7.com. Go make a donation. It's been a pleasure to chat with you, my friend. I look forward to chatting with you again.
Same to you, sir. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you. Have a good night.